Hello, Ashlings. Welcome back to the Phoenix Nest. Today's guest is Gundel, Guild Leader of Mythic.
Hey guys, Gundel here. So I've been playing MMOs for about 16 years, competitively rating for about 12 to 13 of those, doing world first and server first, in EQ and EQ2, and then in my off time playing WoW, trying to climb the ladder, in PvP aspects. Um, Mainly known as a range player, mainly known for playing like the physical type for a ranger, but my off role has always been playing as a mage, and I'll be glad to talk to you guys about mages today.
Now, we're going to do some speculation and theory crafting on the Mage archetype in Ashes of Creation. But first, let's list off the names for each of the Mage class combos. First, we've got the Battle Mage, Mage Fighter, the Spellstone, Mage Tank, Shadowcaster, Mage Rogue, Spell Hunter, Mage Ranger, Archwizard, Mage Mage, Warlock, Mage Summoner, Acolyte, Mage Cleric, and the Sorcerer, Mage Bard. First, we've got the Battle Mage.
So for the battle mage, to me, it seems like it'll be a close quarters combat kind of style where you'll be able to engage and disengage. Kind of their job will be to disrupt the battlefield, kind of favoring items like the Archmage staff and the BR or swords, close quarter combat kind of style, right? Um, their other job will probably have instant damage and bleed effects, because they won't have a lot of time to react in a situation.
Yeah, I was thinking maybe they'd have bleed effects, like maybe rock shards pulse out and deal bleed damage whenever your mage bubble is struck. And I was also thinking maybe we might see the possibility of something like a Wind Fury type thing that adds an additional proc effect to your skill.
So yeah, proc effects might happen, especially off of instant abilities. Like you could have some fire damage being, with dot damage afterwards, or electrocute lightning from an ability, or an augment from your weapon ability, which they might also have, since they are the fighter type class. So they might augment the weapons with magic.
Next, we have the Spellstone.
So for the spellstone, I kind of imagine more of an absorbing kind of magic, soaking kind of the magic and redistributing it back, whether it be through a bubble or an amplification of their buffs where they give more protection through mitigation or magic, that you'll see through the augment abilities of the tank and the mage combined.
I'm thinking an emphasis on adding survivability to their augments. Maybe rock armor for the mage bubble, or adding a slow to whoever hits your bubble. Maybe when you blink, you leave behind a line of rocks that behaves as a tank wall.
That would give it a utility kind of aspect towards kind of what they've already done for the tank, and hopefully they'll continue to give more of a utility aspect with the spellstone, outside of just hopefully not just augments of the buffs and things to give mitigation. Hopefully they do give abilities like what you were suggesting with the blink, giving kind of like either a wall or semi-projectile displacement ability.
Now for this Shadowcaster.
So for the Shadowcaster, I originally just thought it would be kind of like the Priest from WoW, the Shadow Priest, where it would be basically the similar thing outside of it giving heals. And then I kind of started to think maybe it will have, for its blink ability or things of that nature, where it could teleport to a shadow and the shadow would take it your place, kind of like almost like in League of Legends with Zed and things of that nature. So you could have almost shadow displacement, kind of confusing people and giving kind of a utility for an engage or a disengage.
Yeah, that reminds me a lot of the Mesmer from Guild Wars 2. I was also thinking maybe you could add stealth to the end of your blink for a few seconds, or maybe you could change the fireball spell to have a different element, so it'd be more of a shadow flame bolt kind of thing. Or maybe you can add poisons to skills like rock spikes with poison tips, or even poison water like poison pools on the ground. Now for the Spell Hunter.
So for the Spell Hunter, I was kind of thinking more of it being more of a moderate DPS, so like a single target burst with moderate to high CC, so with trap placement, because you're getting the augments from the ranger class, to utilize with the CC from the mage. So it could end up being almost like the Frost Mage in WoW, where you'll have a couple of abilities that'll root, and then it'll do displacement, and then it'll have proc damage based off of you landing your abilities and connecting with the rooted target, destroying it and doing more critical damage, was my line of thinking.
Yeah, I was thinking kind of something similar with magical traps. Maybe you would have something similar to the potion launcher from the BR, where it has the Q ability that creates an ice field. Maybe one of the mage's abilities normally is to have an ice field that goes below them, like under their feet. And then it changes when you augment it to an ability you can launch somewhere, and then it doesn't get triggered until an enemy walks over it. Now, what do you think about the Archwizard?
So the Arc Wizard is kind of, I think, going to be your bread and butter fantasy mage or wizard class. It'll probably have the strongest mage abilities with bigger AoEs or higher damage of mage or magical damage. Probably along those lines, the weakness that'll come from it will be longer cast times, and you'll actually have to utilize range. You won't be up close in the fight like what the battle mage would be or things of that nature. You'll have to be farther in the back, in the back line. Being protected by your allies because you will be so vulnerable to everyone else. But the trade-off is going to be higher damage but longer casts.
Yeah, I feel like this class is going to have the most powerful skills for any of the mage class combos. For example, we might get bigger AoEs such as the BR mode's Grimoire. Normally it's a meteor, but when you hit the Q button, it summons extra meteors that pop out and does more damage. Now for the Warlock.
For the Warlock, I kind of imagine more of dot damage. You might be summoning some minions that are demonic or corrupted in some nature. That'll help you in damage or in tanking or in just overall mitigation. The biggest thing's probably going to be more of an AoE based class with the dot spreading and things of that nature, and probably a little bit more CC heavy. Control would be my assumption.
Yeah, I agree. I expect we'll see this one summoning temporary pets out of elements, or maybe they're just demons or whatever. Maybe you would summon some kind of frost wolf out of your spell and it would deal damage for you, or summon an eagle that was made of wind and it would bellow its wings in order to knock back enemies. Something more like that, but maybe demons.
Yeah, so I think you kind of touched on that about the partial summons. I think that'll be kind of one of the key elements to the class itself, along with like what we talked about earlier, where it will be the dot damage and disease damage, because that really is the fantasy of the Warlock in its own right.
And we've got the Acolyte.
So for the Acolyte, I actually had a hard time kind of trying to nail down what it'll actually be. Most of my experience through MMOs and stuff like that have always been from mobs, where they are kind of like a cross between, a priest and a mage, in the sense of that they did some holy damage and they were always very, very weak. So going back to like when we're talking about the Shadowcaster and how that it'll do a lot of that dot damage and shadow damage, I think this will be the other half of that, in a sense, where it'll have some of those healing abilities that the priest had through damage. Now, I think most of the damage, at least the basic augments, will be divinity or divine. That they'll be casting on their allies for healing, and then they'll be doing damage, which will translate into healing. So I think you'll actually get probably stronger heals out of doing damage, is what I get from the Acolyte class.
Yeah, maybe they could dish out curses and boons, playing off that divine theme. I can also see this one having attacks that heal themselves and teammates for small amounts, making this a really strong off support. And then maybe they also could have a long cast AoEs that deal debuffs or boons to your allies.
So it kind of brought me back thinking about those long cast times. It could also be kind of like the Mystic in EQ2, where you had a shield that would come up and would protect your allies, but it took the prep time of the Mystic a lot longer, but it was a shield that would protect and absorb damage. Or kind of another version of it was like the Disc Priest in WoW, where it was bubbles. I think that could also be a possibility that they could play off of.
And lastly, we have Sorcerer.
So for the Sorcerer, I think it's more going to be interesting because it's Steven's class, right? Steven's always been known as the Sorcerer in Arcade and things of that nature. He kind of references himself that way. He's also kind of stated that no one has ever done Sorcerer the way that he would like it being done. So I think it's going to have kind of its own unique take on it, and we probably won't be able to draw exact parallels on what it'll be. But from our understanding of what Steven has said and things of that nature, I mean, he's been quoted to say that it'll be balanced, but it'll also be Steven's kind of perspective of where it will be more of a CC heavy group oriented class, where it'll probably have buffs and debuffs, and abilities where it'll lock down targets to give the group window more of an opportune time to strike on a mob or a player, is what I understand Steven's going for in the sorcerer class.
Yeah, I think that's about what I thought it was going to be. I think it's going to have a lot of group utility buffs, inspiring words that reference his infamous Independence Day speech that he ripped off. Aside from that, it's probably going to be somewhat OP for a little bit at least. Well, that covers the Mage archetypes class combos. I'm really excited to see how some of our predictions and theory crafting plays out. And in the Castle Siege mode coming in the next couple months, we'll be seeing a better look at the design direction for the Mage in action combat. So look forward to that. Any last thoughts, hopes, or concerns you have for the class, Gundel?
So my hopes and concerns are kind of the same. Balance is the biggest issue. Historically, mages and MMOs have always been far superior to other classes due to damage scaling and large spammable fights. Using BDO is a big example. Your witch and your wizard, super spammy in group versus group combat and in sieges and things of that nature. My hope is that there won't be spammable abilities that will cater to that playstyle where you just literally don't have to think and spam. They'll be hopefully more utility based and hopefully more moments to shine, whether it be giant nukes, whether it be different abilities in that sense, but hopefully getting away from just the constant spam that you get in big, large scale fights, because I really don't believe that is a fun and balanced kind of class. And then on the rating side, obviously the numbers being tweaked and making sure that the utility sides of the other classes or the other possible classes, like what we talked about earlier, what are more utility, actually favor and are played because they are fun to play and that they actually bring something unique to the table and aren't just not taken because they don't do the highest amount of damage, that their CC and their abilities make them viable and sought after.
Yeah, I think those are some valid concerns, because mages tend to lead the pack on damage meters, especially at the beginning of games' lifespans. It's going to definitely be a very interesting challenge for Intrepid to balance that class against everyone else. So we'll see what happens from here. And Gundel, here's your chance to plug the guild or anything else you're working on.
So I'm Gundel, leader of Mythic. Zeke here is an officer of Mythic. The main premise of Mythic is that we plan on being a world first and a rating server first guild in Ashes of Creation. We do have emphasis on PvP and crafting. We are a hardcore guild in that nature for going for world first and server first. So the lighthearted probably need not apply. But if you think you have what it takes and have a decent resume that you would like to submit, you can always probably find it at the bottom of the video. Zeke will probably have a link to the applications and such there. And then we'll get in touch with you.
Alright, I hope you guys had fun listening to all of our crazy ideas and speculation. If you have any speculation or theory you want to share, feel free to drop a comment down below and we can chat about it down there. Remember to like, subscribe, and follow me on Twitch @PhoenixZeke, and I'll see you when you return to the nest.